When the first violation notice appeared on our front door, I dismissed it as a mistake. After all, my sister Sarah's wheelchair ramp had been installed by a licensed contractor, with every permit meticulously secured from the city. We had followed the rules to the letter, ensuring the color, material, and structure met both HOA guidelines and municipal codes. Yet within a month, the notices kept arriving like unwelcome guests, each one carrying the same cold, bureaucratic message: violation of community aesthetic standards. I could almost hear Karen Thompson, our HOA president, dictating these letters with self-satisfied smirk. She was the type of woman who saw herself as the supreme ruler of the neighborhood, patrolling the streets as if the entire cul-de-sac were her personal kingdom. With her designer yoga outfits and carefully highlighted hair, Karen had built her reign on fear and intimidation, turning our peaceful community into her fiefdom. Sarah, however, was not an ordinary resident. She was the governor of our state, a woman who had built her career on resilience, intelligence, and an unshakable commitment to justice. But Sarah never flaunted her position, and after the car accident that left her in a wheelchair 6 months ago, she had chosen to keep a low profile. We wanted our home to be a place of healing, not a political battleground. Unfortunately, Karen saw Sarah's ramp as an affront to her vision of a perfect neighborhood. Another one? Sarah sighed as she wheeled up behind me, her exhaustion evident. Despite her demanding job, she never complained. Not about work, not about the accident, and certainly not about Karen's ridiculous harassment. I crumpled the notice and tossed it into the overflowing drawer of previous warnings. She's obsessed, I muttered. You'd think running the HOA would keep her busy enough without stalking our house. We both turned a window. Across the street, Karen stood in her driveway, her phone aimed directly at our ramp. She was taking pictures. Again, Karen was a master of bureaucratic warfare. Instead of outright demanding the ramp be removed, she played a more insidious game. Every HOA meeting where our case was discussed just happened to be scheduled when Sarah was unavailable. The excuses were always the same: a last-minute time change, a miscommunication, or a sudden emergency agenda item that bumped our issue to the next session. It was a strategic maneuver designed to keep Sarah from defending herself. And it worked, at least for a while. She's doing it on purpose, I grumbled, scrolling through my emails. Another meeting had been scheduled for 10 a.m. on a weekday, conveniently when Sarah would be at the state capitol. Sarah exhaled slowly, centered herself the way she always did before a press conference. We'll handle this the right way. No special favors, no pulling rank. We'll fight this through proper channels. Her patience was admirable, but I wasn't so sure the proper channels would be enough against Karen's relentless vendetta. One morning, I woke to the sound of a tape measure snapping shut. Peering through the blinds, I saw Karen standing at the base of our ramp, scribbling something in a notebook. That was the final straw. I threw open the door. "Excuse me, what are you doing?" Karen barely flinched. "Just ensuring compliance with HOA regulations," she said, her voice thick with fake politeness. "You understand, property values must be maintained." "Funny," I said, arms crossed, "because this ramp follows every single regulation." She flashed a saccharine smile. "Well, that remains to be seen." That's when I started documenting everything. I recorded videos, saved notices, and logged every interaction. A gut feeling told me this battle was far from over. Karen wasn't just harassing us. She was building a case. And like any seasoned manipulator, she wasn't working alone. One morning, as I helped Sarah into her car for physical therapy, I noticed two men in suits standing near Karen's house. They were pointing at our ramp, gesturing animatedly as Karen nodded along, an unmistakable look of triumph on her face. Something about it felt wrong. "I don't like this," I told Sarah, my stomach tightening. Sarah adjusted her blazer. "We'll handle the right way," she repeated, but this time, even she sounded uncertain. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Karen's voice carried clearly across the yard. "Yes, we'll need the bulldozer here first thing tomorrow morning. The board has already approved the removal." I nearly dropped my phone. A bulldozer? I rushed inside, my heart pounding. Flipping through our files, I searched for our permits, legal documents, anything that could prove this was illegal. And then I found something that changed everything. Karen wasn't just wrong. She was about to commit a crime. The next morning, I was jolted awake by a sound that didn't belong. A deep mechanical rumbling. I sprang to the window, and my blood ran cold. A bright yellow bulldozer sat in our driveway. Karen stood beside it, looking pleased as a queen surveying her kingdom. Her manicured hands clutched a stack of official-looking papers, and she was speaking animatedly with construction foremen. I grabbed my phone and ran outside. What the hell is going on? Karen turned, her smile widening. Oh, good. You're home, she chirped, her tone dripping with artificial sweetness. I have here an emergency order from the HOA board. This ramp is in direct violation of community standards and will be removed immediately. I snatched my phone from my pocket, recording everything. Karen, this is illegal. We have city permits, ADA protections, and property rights. You can't just destroy someone's accessibility ramp. Karen's smile didn't waver. The city isn't the HOA, dear, she said condescendingly. And as president of the board, it's my duty to ensure our neighborhood remains presentable. The bulldozer's engine roared to life. Neighbors started peeking out from behind their curtains. The air was thick with tension. Last chance, Karen. I warned, gripping my phone tightly. You're making a huge mistake. She gave a smug shrug. Sometimes, people need to learn that rules exist for a reason. And with that, she nodded to the driver. The bulldozer's massive blade slammed into the ramp. The screech of metal against concrete was deafening. As the first chunk of Sarah's ramp crumbled into dust, a wave of anger surged through me. I wasn't just watching wood and concrete be torn apart. I was watching Sarah's dignity, independence, and rights be trampled under the weight of unchecked power. What Karen didn't realize was that she had just lit the fuse on a bomb that was about to explode in her face. Because while she was gloating over her victory, she failed to notice the black SUVs turning onto our street. She didn't hear the distant wail of sirens growing closer. And she certainly didn't realize that her reign of terror was about to come to an abrupt, humiliating end, because she had just bulldozed the wheelchair ramp of the most powerful woman in the state. And Sarah was about to show her exactly what that meant. As the bulldozer's blade tore into the ramp, splintering wood and sending chunks of concrete flying, my grip on my phone tightened. I kept recording, my hands shaking with rage. But then, something unexpected happened. Lights flickered on in the houses around us. Curtains twitched. Doors creaked open. One by one, our neighbors stepped out, their sleepy confusion turning to horror as they realized what was happening. Across the street, Mr. Rodriguez, our elderly neighbor, stood in his doorway, his face pale with disbelief. Next to him, Mrs. Jenkins clutched her phone to her chest, her fingers hovering over the screen. The Wilsons, the Chens, the Bakers, all of them emerged, their eyes fixed on the unfolding destruction. I spotted at least a dozen phones being raised. Cameras flashed. Video feeds went live. Karen, still oblivious of the shift in the air, practically beamed with satisfaction. She turned to the foreman. Make sure it's completely gone. No remnants. No excuses. A worker hesitated. Ma'am, I think we should. Do it, she snapped. The bulldozer lurched forward again, its metal teeth slicing deeper into the ramp. And that's when I heard it, the sound that changed everything. Not the bulldozer. Not Karen's shrill voice. Sirens. A lot of them. Karen frowned. The bulldozer rumbled to a stop. The air shifted. Down the street. 3 black SUVs turned the corner, their tinted windows reflecting the flashing red and blue of state police cruisers following closely behind. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder. The first SUV braked hard, and before it had fully stopped, the back door swung open, and out rolled Sarah. The street fell silent. Sarah was dressed in her official governor's blazer, her state pin gleaming under the streetlights. Her security team flanked her, their movements precise, practice, commanding. For the first time that morning, Karen's confidence cracked. "WH, what is this?" she stammered, stepping back as Sarah rolled toward her, her wheelchair moving with steady purpose. "This is a private HOA matter. You have no right." Sarah raised a hand, and just like that, Karen shut up. Actually, Mrs. Thompson. Sarah's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. This became a state matter the moment you violated federal disability laws. Karen's face went through a series of rapid, delightful transformations, from confusion to anger, from anger to fear. Sarah continued, not to mention, you've just demolished state property without authorization. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward Karen. The screen displayed a property deed. The words at the top sent a visible shudder through Karen's spine. State-owned accessibility project. Official governor's residence. Karen's lips parted, but no sound came out. Yes, Sarah said smoothly. Would you like to see the paperwork? Or should we move on to discussing the Americans with Disabilities Act? I happen to be particularly familiar with Title II. The crowd reacted instantly. Gasps, murmurs, hushed whispers. Phone zoomed in on Karen's face. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse for her, they did. Sarah motioned to her assistant, who stepped forward holding a thick binder. My legal team has been reviewing your HOA's bylaws all morning, Sarah said, flipping open a page. Would you like to know what we found? The HOA board members, who had stood confidently behind Karen moments ago, were suddenly shuffling backward, distancing themselves from their so-called leader. Karen's voice wobbled. I don't see how this is relevant. Sarah didn't even look up. Multiple violations of state housing laws. Discriminatory practices against disabled residents. And, she paused for effect, irregular financial records going back 3 years. The crowd gasped. I didn't think Karen could get any paler, but she somehow did. Irregular? One of the HOA board members echoed, now looking at Karen with suspicion. Karen started backpedaling. Literally, this is ridiculous. I didn't know. That I was the governor? Sarah tilted her head. Or that bulldozing a disabled person's access ramp is a federal offense? Behind Sarah, 2 state investigators stepped forward, notebooks in hand. Mrs. Thompson. One of them said, his tone professional but firm. We'll need you to come with us to answer some questions about today's events. And these financial discrepancies. Karen's jaw fell open. But the HOA bylaws clearly state. Sarah held up a single finger. No HOA is exempt from federal law. The silence was deafening. As Karen was escorted toward a police car, she clutched her HOA rule book like it was a lifeline. The very same book she had used to bully, manipulate, and control the neighborhood for years. The cameras zoomed in. Mrs. Jenkins was live on Facebook. The Wilsons were streaming to a community group. Even the local news station had arrived. Karen turned back to the crowd, desperate, searching for support. But her board members? They were gone. Her allies? Nowhere to be found. Her loyal followers? Suddenly silent. Because when bullies fall, they fall alone. As Karen's car door slammed shut, Sarah turned to the gathered neighbors. She gestured to the wreckage of the ramp. This isn't just about me, she said, her voice strong, commanding. This is about every person's right to live with dignity in their own home. The crowd shifted, guilt, anger, understanding reflected in their faces. And then, something incredible happened. One by one, people stepped forward. Mrs. Chun, from across the street, held up a stack of old notices. Karen made me remove my medical garden, she said, her voice shaking. Mr. Rodriguez pulled out a file of fines. She threatened me for installing a wheelchair lift for my father. The Baker family, their son, who was autistic, had been forced to remove his sensory-friendly playground because it clashed with community aesthetics. People weren't just listening. They were speaking. And for the first time in years, this neighborhood felt like a community again. This was no longer just about a ramp. It was about justice. It was about fighting back. And most importantly, it was about finally breaking free from Karen's grip. As the sun rose over shattered remains of Sarah's wheelchair ramp, the neighborhood was buzzing with whispers, outrage, and, most importantly, action. What had started as a private battle between our family and Karen had now exploded into a full-blown community uprising. But we weren't done yet. Sarah's legal team had spent the entire night combing through the HOA's financial records, which had been leaked anonymously, and what they found was nothing short of criminal. That morning, as I sat at our kitchen table, my phone buzzed nonstop. A civil rights lawyer, an old high school friend of mine, had emailed me a set of court documents. I nearly spilled my coffee when I saw what they contained. Karen had been sued 3 times before for similar HOA abuses: bulldozing disabled residents' accessibility structures, misappropriating HOA funds, and enforcing arbitrary, discriminatory fines to line her own pockets. The only reason she had never faced consequences? She had always quietly settled out of court and moved to a new neighborhood. But this time, she had picked the wrong house to mess with. Sarah wasted no time. She called an emergency press conference right in our front yard, standing before a sea of news cameras, with a destroyed ramp behind her. "This isn't just about me," she declared, holding up a thick stack of papers. "This is about every homeowner who has ever been bullied by an HOA." The news anchors gasped as she flipped through page after page of evidence. Fines that Karen had issued for Christmas decorations, medical gardens, wheelchair lifts, and even a child swing set. But the real bombshell came when Sarah revealed where the HOA's money had been going. Karen had embezzled thousands of dollars, using the HOA's fines to fund her own home renovations. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That's when Karen's own lawyer quit, live, on air. As the fallout from Karen's reign of terror spread, people started asking the big question: how had she gotten away with this for so long? Sarah had an answer. In that same press conference, she announced that she had been working on a new law, one designed to protect homeowners from HOA abuse. It would be called the Right to Home Happiness Act. The proposal included tighter regulations on HOA powers, preventing them from targeting homeowners unfairly, increased oversight, making HOA financial records public and transparent, stronger protections for disabled residents, ensuring that ramps, medical gardens, and accessibility structures could never be destroyed again. When she finished outlining the bill, the crowd erupted into cheers. The story had gone viral overnight. Thousands of people across the country shared their own HOA horror stories, and within weeks, Sarah's bill was on its way to becoming law. Meanwhile, Karen, she was facing a full-fledged state investigation. The police had uncovered dozens of falsified documents, including forged signatures that Karen had used to justify the bulldozing of our ramp. And the best part? Sarah's legal team discovered that Karen had never even been properly elected HOA president. She had simply taken over when the last president moved away, and no one had dared to question her. Until now, with Karen officially removed and under investigation, the HOA was left in shambles. The remaining board members resigned in disgrace, and in their place, the neighborhood elected a new, community-driven HOA, one focused on helping, not controlling. The first order of business? They turned Karen's former violations office into a community help center. Instead of issuing fines, they started issuing welcome baskets to new neighbors. Instead of policing house colors and mailbox designs, they funded home improvement projects for elderly residents. But the biggest transformation? They made accessibility a priority. Sarah's ramp was rebuilt, stronger, wider, and more beautiful than ever. Local artists volunteered to paint it with vibrant flowers, and at night, soft LED lights illuminated the edges, making it the most stunning feature in the neighborhood. What had once been called an eyesore had now become a symbol of resilience. Just when we thought the story was over, something amazing happened. The bulldozing company, the very one Karen had hired to destroy Sarah's ramp, reached out with an apology. Their CEO personally visited Sarah and admitted, "We had no idea what we were doing." To make amends, they announced they would now offer free wheelchair ramp installations for disabled residents across the state. They even set up a scholarship fund for students pursuing careers in disability rights law. And if that wasn't enough, Sarah's story made it into school textbooks. It was being taught as a case study on standing up to injustice. But the real victory wasn't in the headlines. It wasn't in the viral videos. It wasn't even in the new laws. It was in the little things, like seeing Mrs. Rodriguez's garden gnome army grow bigger every week, or watching kids play freely on their lawns, no longer afraid of violation notices, or the day Karen's old house was finally sold, and the new family moved in with 3 kids, 2 dogs, and a wheelchair ramp for their grandmother. And this time, no one complained. In fact, 5 neighbors showed up to help them unpack. Because we hadn't just changed an HOA, we had changed minds. And that was the real victory.